Okay, we are rolling. Sean Allman, welcome to the Terrain Theory Podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Ben and Mike. Can people see Mike too? Is he on the show?
He's on the show. Mike
Oh,
is the show. Mike is the show.
Okay. Because sometimes these rooms, they have the producer, you can see them and stuff, but they're not actually in the show.
No, Mike is the show. I pretend that I'm the guy that does the introduce, but he's the brains.
I see all the wires on the floor in the background that and the guitars. That's the room of a technician. If I was to pan my can't, or maybe I can't do it. It'll wreck my spaceship. But I have a similar setup right over there. I have guitars and wires everywhere. It's the hallmark of a architect of content creation, you could say. And it's like your life in wires, dude. How many things rely on wires?
Sean, are you a musician?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so what do you play?
I play guitar, ukulele, piano, harmonica. I can play the oboe very badly. I can play a little melody from old Paul McCartney song on it. I played in a psychedelic reggae band for almost 8 years back in Ontario in my old life. And what was great about that was because I was into a little bit of esoterics even back then. I got the band to tune the instruments to 432 for A.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So we were pretty good. Like we weren't it was reggae music. It's pretty easy. People like it. There's not much going on there. But I was finding that as we continued playing and using this tuning, that I was noticing that people were having almost what would you say, like ecstatic experiences or something. Like it was like people were like falling in love with each other and drunk. It was like but they weren't drunk. You know what I mean? And then we started getting requests to play private parties constantly. So a lot of our gigs were birthday parties for people in their like late 50s.
Because they knew what sort of spell was going to be cast by this music on their party.
And that's what they said. It's like, I don't know what it is about you guys. It's like this vibe. I love this vibe. And it's like, well, all music would probably have that vibe if they didn't go in there and castrate, the amazing effects of music on the human psyche. I mean, music's awesome no matter what, right? But when you use those particular frequencies like you can also tune a piano to the heart chakra because the C note is very close to I think it's 528 hertz. And that is a wonderful sounding thing too. And it's very close. Like the original tuning of a C note is not much far away from 528. So I think it's less than a quarter tone. So it's a very non-perceived change. It's like C, like that, like barely not even a half tone. But then you start playing some chords on, you're like, oh, and it's something that I can't even verbalize. Like I don't have the words for it. But you feel it. And what's interesting with guitars is when you tune them to 432, you can actually hear the wood. The wood speaks louder because it's a fundamental resonance of this particular arrangement of our dimension. Our dimension is built off these harmonic sounds, whether it be in the electromagnetic spectrum, which is the visual spectrum, or the audio spectrum. It's like the same laws apply, the same. I won't call them laws, but maybe universal recommendations, right?
Well put.
So, man, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now in the world. A lot of people are really concerned about, economic collapses and the government's going rogue, and the situation in the Middle East has always been sketchy, and right now in particular, there's a lot of opinions about that. But something else that's going on. Oh, and let's not even get into the COVID stuff because we're all still dealing with that, I think. And we'll talk about that later. But I wanted to bring in something positive today. I wanted to have something that puts hope into the future. And that is plasmoid unification theory. And that's just one of the names for it because it turns out over the past 100 years or so, scores of scientists have been working on the same thing, but they've been compartmentalized. So they've been calling it different things, and they're all finding the same phenomena. And now, just recently, in the past 3 months, they're all opening the books and showing the notes to each other. And I mean, this is like the main thing I wanted to talk to you about today.
So before we get into it, what are some of the other names it's known by?
Well, the plasmoids itself, like plasmoid is a kind of a loose umbrella term. But essentially what it is ball lightning. So there's an observed phenomena that happens, and this isn't a conspiracy. It's not a secret. Anyone can look up accounts and stories and even photos and pictures and blah, blah, blah. That there is a form of lightning, like normally known as lightning as it's a release of plasma between two places of opposing charges, and it seeks to balance the charges between a positive and negative, right? That's the one that we're all familiar with. We've seen lightning. We know what it does. Static electricity, it's the same thing. Static electricity is the same thing. It just disconnects. So I'm just saying that word again. But what happens sometimes is the lightning won't go from positive to negative. It'll actually get trapped in itself. And it ends up becoming a ball, or what looks like a ball. It's actually a toroid shape. But what you see is an electrified ball. You see a sphere. And
this is St. Elmo's fire, right? This is that phenomenon.
Fire is a form of plasma. Yes.
Okay.
It's you have electrified carbon is what you're seeing with fire. Okay. It's you've seen carbon molecules that are excited. And just a disclaimer here, I'm not an expert on this. I'm an explorer. I'm a researcher. Okay. Like, I'm going to give some references and places that people can follow up on this, because I think everybody should open their eyes to this, because we're talking. So, okay, let's back it up a bit.
Okay.
We have, balls of lightning. Okay. And it's like, great. Well, okay. So lightning can be a ball. Who cares? Well, the thing is the effects that these balls of electricity that are floating around have on other things. And they're massive. These things distort time. They distort gravity. They distort magnetic force. So these things have flown into people's houses. So it'll come in your window. They move through glass. People have had these come into their window and then they explode. So it's a loud explosion, but it's not a force explosion like a TNT or dynamite or something pressurized that's going pop. So there's no air movement. But what it's an explosion of is magnetic force. So it's not that the walls got blown out. It's the nails that were holding the walls, and any metal that was in the walls actually gets affected by this magnetic field and gets blasted out of the house. And this happened multiple times. And again, it's not a conspiracy. It's not a secret. Ball lightning is a very real phenomena. And in fact, I think it's rather puzzling that there isn't more mainstream research on it. And now there's reasons for that. So an Australian, I believe he's a mechanical engineer, and he worked in the oil industry for a long time. And he got into Randall Carlson's sacred numerology research. And then he started combining this with plasmoid theory, and then creating, he's got this device called what's called a Thunderstorm Generator. So if you use Randall Carlson, and they're not Randall Carlson, these are like numbers that come from Sumeria, they come from the ancient Egyptians, the proportions of the pyramid that everyone's obsessed with. Like it appears to be a machine. Indeed it is. Indeed it is a machine. And what I think it is a machine that is designed to process, alter, and accumulate plasmoids that exist in nature. So the research that Malcolm Bendel, I'm all over the map here, but I'm just going to out with it, is the best that I can, because this is really exciting stuff. What's super exciting about this is Malcolm Bendel has built a working prototype. So it's not just theory. It's not just, he's been secretly working on this for 15 years because his experience in the oil industry, he understands the risks. He understands, how these guys, like the guy who, you know, made the car run on water, is probably using related technology. This guy disappears, technology disappears. It's, you know, so he's doing an open source. He's releasing the patents as open source, and the website is called strikefoundation.earth. Okay, I recommend everybody and their grandma at least go to the site and have a look. And you can download the patents. You can look at the very I would say, well, I wouldn't say very, but they're scientifically dense. Like I'm still wrapping my head around it, and I've been reading and everything I can for about 2 months now on this. But what we're looking at, the implications of this technology. So let's get to the juicy part, okay? So you can creating plasmoids. How do you create one? Well, there's a shrimp called the pistol shrimp, and these little guys are famous for blowing up aquariums. And how they do that is they have a claw that's instead of designed for crushing strength, it's designed for speed. So it's just a claw that goes boom, and it pops, and it creates what's called a cavitation bubble. And you can go on YouTube and watch. There's lots of YouTube videos about pistol shrimp. They're really neat. And they say, watch this. And they film it in like 150,000 frames a second. And you'll see right at the center of a cavitation bubble that the shrimp creates when it snaps its claw closed, which, by the way, knocks out any fish nearby. They go unconscious, like it messes them up. Apparently, the center of the bubble, they measured the temperature as being hotter than the center of the sun, and photons are emitted, as in light. There's a flash of literal light. If you could go down into the ocean, and that unfortunate submarine accident where it imploded a couple, how deep was it? 1 mile, 2 miles down? That would have created a cavitation bubble of immense proportions. And there would have been a flash of light released and again, heat exceeding the temperature of the sun. Now, what is that exactly? It's like, oh, cool. Wow. Light comes out. But like, hang on though. What is that light? Where does that light come from? And what it is, it's electrical energy that's coming out of what you could say the ether, the plasma, right? So all around us all the time, there is a huge amount of voltage energy, usable electrical energy. There's a lot of it around thunderstorms and also high voltage power lines. All kinds of strange phenomena happen around high voltage power lines. So what Malcolm Bendel's done, he's figured out a way to create plasmoids, little tiny ones, because you can make big ones, you can make little ones. There's ones that are suspended in air, and there's ones in water that you can create in water. The ones that are created in the air are usually from massive, big thunderstorms, and they're very dangerous and unstable. The ones that are made in water, like our little buddy, the shrimp, they're quite controllable and they're quite stable, so they last longer. Think like a top. A top that you spin on a table is defying gravity for a while, and then it collapses again. But if you give it that spin, you give it that spin, that's the key, the spin. You have electrical energy moving in a spin, in a toroid. What happens if you, let's say, vibrate it? Okay, well, why don't we use some of those numbers on those, 432, 528, these numbers that seem to have stayed in humanity for what? Arguably 15,000 years. They go back. Definitely 10,000, but it might go back another 10 further than that. And there's a lot of conjecture about that. I think it's entirely possible it could go back 100,000 years and we just don't know. Because the thing is, okay, let's get back. I like to do this. I go on to tangents. So he's made this device. What it does is you use the electrolysis process, which is you put two conductors into a jar of water or a thing of water, right? You split the hydrogen and the oxygen apart. And then you create fizzy bubbles. You got bubbles. And what he does is he sends these bubbles through some steel wool. Like, this is all real advanced technology, right? Steel wool makes the bubbles smaller. Now here's the fun bit. It's in a pressurized container, and he adds pressure to that container violently and suddenly. So you get millions of cavitation bubbles at the same time. Now we have plasmoids, but they're all random. They're all big, little, small. And what do they do? What do we use them for? Right? So what he does, he puts them then through what's called the Thunderstorm Generator, which is 2 spheres and an inner pipe with warm air going through and an outer pipe. So the 2 airflows don't actually touch each other in this sphere contraption. What it creates is a vortex situation, similar to when warm, moist air trades places with hot, dry air in the atmosphere and creates these like hurricanes, which are, the amount of energy in those is insane, but we're getting there. This vortex contraption, calls it the Thunderstorm Generator, is actually very specifically built and tuned the same way that the length of the pipe you use for a woodwind instrument or a saxophone or something affects the mother tone, right? Like that's the only thing. Whenever we had a sax player play with the band, I was like, they can't tune to 432 because they'd actually have to shave some of the length out of the pipe that makes that's how the physics of saxophones work. It's the length of them. It's not like a guitar where you just spin the thingy, or a keyboard where you tap a couple buttons. Anyways, he's got these things tuned to the tunings of the reaction that he wants to happen. And it's experimental still, but he's got the theory now. And it's not just Malcolm Bendel. Malcolm Bendel has been working off the research of Martin Fleischmann. He's been working off the research of Randall Carlson, which a lot of people know is Graham Hancock's buddy. They're the guys that go and they're always checking out the Grand Canyon. And what's that 10,000 year flood they call it?
I'm not certain.
Well, they're pretty convinced that there is a massive, massive flood about 12,000 years ago, which would make physical sense, because at the time we were at the end of an ice age. There would have been a long melt. There would have been an ocean worth of water sitting on top of an ice cube that could just go at any second, kind of thing, which is really plausible. It's very, very, very plausible. And a lot of geologists
also aligns with the Yuga cycle, if you follow that.
Yeah, right. I don't know specifically the Yuga cycle, but the cycles are playing a role. We're actually at the end of a cycle right now. We're at the end of, is it an ice? I think we're at the end of an ice age.
End of the Kali Yuga. It's supposed to be next year.
We're going into Aquarius out of whatever the other one is.
Right, that too.
So once we get the plasmoids into this Thunderstorm Generator, they get tuned. So there's the phenomena of like electrostatic electricity is happening, and they get bigger. So they make the plasmoids bigger, and they get tuned so they're more stable. And then they fire them into the combustion chamber of a standard V6 Chevrolet engine. And what happens inside of the combustion chamber is the good part, because these little balls of electricity are taking the carbon and turning it into nitrogen and oxygen. And this is only the first application. So we're talking zero emissions for with a device that's like $35 in parts. That could probably be made anywhere, which will be made anywhere. The government of India, believe it or not, is jumping on board. Why is this? Well, which country still has all their records going back 10,000 years? Which country has all those number sciences come out of? The Vedas. They talk about these floating spaceship things they had.
Yeah. Right.
In the Vedas, they have all those the sacred geometry and the numerology is still preserved in India, and they respect it. It's not crazy woo-woo in India. They have respect for it. So the Strike Foundation team, they have a giant working prototype actually built and running in the United Kingdom. You can find that on the internet, on YouTube actually. And you have the aerospace engineer who works on like DARPA project. Like he's a CNC guy. He works in but he's a high end CNC guy, one of the highest end you can get. He literally makes parts for Boeing and NASA and whatever. And he was explaining the phenomena, which he didn't understand. He doesn't understand like how this thing is working, but he sees how it works. And he runs through like off the top of his head because, okay, so you have the combustion chamber thing going on. You got the zero emissions thing going on. The fuel efficiency is increased vastly for some reason. But then what's going on with those? Remember I said the tubes, the Thunderstorm Generator? There's all kinds of properties happening here. There's heat and cold stuff happening over here. And we're talking using the engine's own energy. So I didn't tell that, but this thing is connected to a motor. It's taking intake air, like the one end of the Thunderstorm Generator is just taking in room temperature air. The other end of the generator is taking in the exhaust from the engine. So that's where the heat comes from to get the reaction going. Now, what they're finding is when you're changing, okay, we all know that you can change one molecule into another. You're like, that's chemistry, basic chemistry. But here's the thing, is you can change atoms into other atoms, or I should say elements into other elements. So the periodic table that we look at is actually laid out incorrectly. It's almost right. It's very close to being right. The real periodic table is actually it's a toroid shape. And you can follow the resonance of each of the elements. So if you introduce plasmoids that are tuned in a specific way to, let's say, copper, you could turn it into silver, or you could turn it into gold, or up and down, whatever direction. So those are like, you could say, keys in music. Like gold is the key of A, and you're going to have chords and notes in that key, and those are the elements. Hydrogen is actually all elements. All elements are a form of hydrogen. That is, so that now we're getting into a bit of the theory of this. Okay. Now there's a Russian scientist who's been studying plasmoids for 25 years in Russia. No one knew about him in the Western world. He is now joined up with the Martin Fleischmann Foundation and Malcolm Bendel. And he was at there's a recent technology conference in India. And he's got some pretty amazing plasmoid stories. Like he saw one as a kid. Like when you see a glowing ball sphere, I've never seen one. But I think it changes you probably. And these things are weird. They do weird stuff. They're not affected by wind. They're not affected by gravity. They're kind of like in the radio spectrum world. It's like being able to look into radio frequency land. Do you understand what a radio frequency looks like? Yeah, could you visualize? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like what it's almost incomprehensible how they work. If we were to think of it as like something we could look and see and touch, even though we can't. These things follow you. They'll like detect, they seem to have some kind of consciousness. One of them attached itself to a guy's head. So his whole head was inside of it. And he had a gold chain. And when it exploded, his gold chain vaporized. He had some hearing damage and light burns around his neck, but that was it. And his gold chain was gone. So that was a bad day for that guy. There's a story of a plasmoid, a big one, like 3.5 feet across, attached itself to a train in Russia, parked train, off, no engines running. It dragged the train, an entire train, down the train tracks for an hour and a half.
That's crazy. What?
So this is gravity. These things can alter gravity.
Sean, in simple terms, how would you define a plasmoid? Just luminous plasma?
Well, I would define it as if a field of force.
Okay.
All right. So the Russian actually defined them pretty well. He found that they are actually water molecules that are very, very loosely suspended in an electromagnetic net.
Interesting.
So they're kind of like, think of it like a bubble, but it's an electric bubble, and it's also it doesn't have like an outer casing. It's actually a toroid thing that's going spinning like this, and like a top, and it'll retain that energy until it burns out or disappears or transmutes something. What What this means, though, that they can alter elements. I mean, what is the other way that we know of to alter an element? Let's say turn helium into.
Well, I was thinking alchemy, just as a this is really what alchemy is, isn't it?
Yes. So the only way that we've been able to alter an element or release the energy of matter has been nuclear explosions, right? Or even a hydrogen chain reaction. What we're talking about here is this is happening in, a room with no radiation, and we're changing one element to another and releasing energy. Mm-hmm. What is this? What is happening here? This is cold fusion, boys. This is cold fusion, and not like movie Hollywood. This is the real deal. This is the real thing. They got Malcolm has all kinds of devices ready to go and prototype to start making these things work. So you just it's like you got a half cup of water, you got enough electricity for 6 months just by splitting apart the hydrogen and oxygen. By using these plasmoids. How do they use these plasmoids? Electromagnetic. It's like all of the complexity that our electronics systems have now. It's almost got us in like a childish miasma of helplessness, because we're surrounded by circuit boards and micro. But the tools and the equipment needed to work with plasma, or plasmoids, I should say, rather, and this different form of electricity, which Tesla was definitely onto, the Wardenclyffe Tower. And he was always saying, like, energy is everywhere. It's all around us. We're just kind of going about it in a, like, I think we've been boxed in on purpose in the way that our energy works. Like, well, how do we put a meter on it, right? There's that famous Edison quote.
Yeah.
He goes to Tesla, how do I put a meter on it? And it's like, is that really what this is about?
Yeah, it is scarcity, right? That's how they monetize and create fear, and a scarcity mindset keeps us in check.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the other thing, okay. So let's say that this technology is released. People start, like, smarter and smarter people get involved, and that's why I'm talking about it. I'm not one of the guys that's going to innovate. I'm not a physicist, right? But I want physicists, young budding physicists, to like get into the right, because I think like the universities now are just a pipeline into stupidity.
Yeah, it's just perpetuating the existing system.
And the way that they talk about, so they don't even teach anything about this very real and important phenomenon. I'm an electrician by trade. I don't know about any of this.
Right.
I know quite a bit about electrical theory and how it works and how to not die when you're using it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, they don't teach you anything about ball lightning.
No.
Nothing.
No. Well, you're providing some nuance. We had a conversation a little ways back with these fellows named Peter and Pete. Now, they were challenging the nature of water and claiming that water was not H2O. We asked them what it is. They said, couldn't tell you, which I got a kick out of. But they made the claim that the water engine, for lack of a better term, wasn't actually running on hydrogen, as was sort of claimed in the non.
I think you're right.
But that it was a reaction from the electricity and the components of that quote unquote water engine. But this adds another layer to it. That reaction is achieving and creating a plasmoid, and that is what is
plasmoids. Lots of tiny little, and they're not even. See, the thing that Malcolm takes it to the next level is he's actually manipulating them. He's actually like, it's like, I sing a note, but now I have 12 guys doing the fifth and the second harmonies, and it's very much more powerful.
Yeah,
right. He's doing the equivalent of that. So we're not just acknowledging that plasmoids exist, and I think who you just mentioned, I think they're onto something. It's not the water itself. It's actually the plasmoids, which are little bits of bundles of electricity, essentially voltage, that are creating the power. When it comes to water as well, it's almost never just straight H2O. There's H2O2, and there could be little bits of H3O3. Like there's so in a way they're right, but maybe that's a little bit getting into semantics a little bit. But I think I tend to agree with that. And I was going to, mention that along with like, when they talk about structured water.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was very skeptical about structured water. I think, what's the difference between, something that I just run through a reverse osmosis system and then it sits in the fridge and then I drink it. What's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a huge difference because the movement and the electric charge is why, like, water is an electric medium. Everyone knows it's a conductor. Don't stand in the water and plug something in, man. And being that it's an electrical conductor, what does that make us?
Right.
We're just
99.9% water.
walking, talking plasmoids, essentially, just very complex ones. And then you start getting into the nature of consciousness itself and the fact that people seem to have interactions with these things and they seem to have some kind of organization that they do. It's not necessarily intelligence in the sense of they're going to, write a Shakespeare play, but it's intelligence in the way that like a colony of ants will self-organize and sustain itself and do behaviors. There's no thinking. It's just it's always going to go to electricity follows rules. It goes to the path of least resistance, right? There's certain rules that it follows. Anyways, we're getting into the weeds a little bit here.
No, it's good. I mean, the beauty of the structured water conversation, just to boil it down to its essence, no pun intended, but is that you structure water essentially by vortexing it. And what is a vortex but a toroid? So we just come back to the toroid in the end.
Right. And now you're creating all these electrical charges. You're making the water alive. Yeah. Because you're creating movement, which creates charge difference. And that makes the water alive. So maybe structured is the wrong word.
Sure.
But now I'm no longer skeptical about structured water. I haven't been for a long time. But I mean, now I understand what structured water is. You don't necessarily need to put it through, a specific thing. Like structured water comes out of a mountain, sure. Right? The best water the most healthy water you can drink by a long, long shot. And it's also, I'm pretty sure it's anthropologically known that people would tend to live around places that had mountainous stream water, and they would gravitate towards drinking that over any other water. That's actually where the hydrogen machines come from, is Japan. And they have a word for it. They call it Hansa water. And they all go to these mountain streams where the water comes out of the aquifers, out of the mountain. They just bathe in it, they drink it, and they hang out there, and then they live a lot longer than most of the rest of the world. So,
Fountain of youth. There's a lot behind the mythology.
Yeah, Sean. So where does the unification theory piece fit in?
So the unification theory piece is bringing in that it's bringing in quantum physics, and then your Einstein physics. It's kind of bringing them together, right? It's like, we have string theory and all these weird things to try and make it make sense. I'm actually pretty skeptical about Einstein in general. I think that he is a product of a think tank and possibly a propaganda pawn.
Okay.
But that's a different story. Well, maybe not though, because
maybe not.
It's like, this is the guy, he's the smartest ever, and it's like, cool, great, but like, is there any innovation or deviation on that specific trajectory available, or are you just boxing in physics for 100 years because everyone is too concerned with the latest fashion trend of Einstein relativity to attempt venturing further into what is unknown, or I mean, what is his interactions with Nikola Tesla, right? Who I think somehow accessed, like, you just know things sometimes, and there's some kind of, the Earth itself is like, when you look at a cloud, you think, oh, that's water vapor. It's like, no, you're actually looking at an electric field. You're looking at voltage. You're looking at electricity. Clouds are plasmoids. They're big, spread out, ugly ones, and probably millions and millions of them. When they start moving together, you see the energy.
Yeah.
And there's tons of it.
Isn't just to oversimplify, didn't Einstein essentially remove ether?
I believe so.
Whereas Tesla was essentially studying ether energy. And Einstein
was studying radio waves, electromagnetics. Einstein was studying throwing a rock and how fast time passes if you're on the rock versus the person that threw it.
Practical stuff.
Very useful practical physics right there. Well, I now know that I get in my light speed car, that when I come back, it's going to be 40 years have gone by and I'll be the same age. Like, that's super useful. Yeah. Whereas the stuff that, the other guys are working on, like Tesla, and there's a few other scientists, the famous guys get all the attention, but often it's not just one guy. There's usually a lot of people,
of course,
pushing forward the science in the vanguard. And I mean, right now they have the biggest, you could say, propaganda machine working against everybody that the world has ever seen. You have these media companies that are they're not there, but they're close to it. They almost had it before the internet, a total monopolization on any and all information that is released for public consumption. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't want to get into the conspiracy stuff, but just long story short, it's all the same people. The same people that run the universities and control that are the same people that run the investment company, which is the same company that runs the big media company, which is now the same company that even goes right down into video games. Like, they're infiltrating and trying to influence everything. They're doing it very aggressively. And I'm wondering if they're kind of ramping things up, because I don't think that it's possible for them to be able to put a lid on this. The people that are involved in this technology now are not just hobbyist garage inventor guys. Yeah, they are that, but we're talking someone who's got international experience, 30 years in the oil industry with some of the most aggressive and arguably criminal, predatory business mother effers out there. So he's not like Nikola Tesla, God bless him, but he was one night, he was like a 5-year-old child coming in to work with these demons, these business demons. He's like, I want to change the world and energy should be free and available. And they're like, shut up, child, back to the lab.
Yeah.
He had no idea what he was dealing with and didn't care for the mundalities of legal and business, right? This guy's all over it. And their group is all over it. And they're open sourcing it. He's like, you can't kill me because I already have it all released. Go ahead, try. And they're working with scientists in Finland, India. It's starting to grow now. And they got serious investment money coming in. Because it's going to be kind of funny that the, emissions problem. Oh, we got too much carbon. The world, it's like, oh, we just fixed it. It's like, just throw this on your car. Done. Poof.
Yeah. What's the lever now that you're going to pull to control us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the next lever going to be? Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, I can power my house with a 1 square foot box with simple glass, metal, some dirt, and it's just built with the correct port. Like, it's not circuit boards made in Thailand or Taiwan. I meant. It's literally things that you can make with everyday materials, and they did. I mean, you have examples of it throughout history of things that in the what is the Ark of the Covenant, for instance? Like, where does the line between spirituality and technology? I think that was broken on purpose, but spirituality and religiosity is, I think, if you go back 20,000 years, actually technology is actually a form of technology. Sure, it would look like magic. I have a rod, right? A glass rod.
Yeah.
I rub it on some ox hair, and then I start zapping people. They're going to think I'm a wizard. Mm-hmm. If they've never seen anything like that before, they don't understand static electricity or charges or anything like that. And I mean, you have the you have also all these situations. I like to call it the cell phone caveman situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's where you give something like a cell phone to someone who's never seen technology before in their entire life. Like, they're not going to be able to reverse engineer it. They'll be able to use it until the battery dies. And that probably happened when you have. So the thing that I've been thinking about this, because I like to think ahead in a logical way. I'm not a genius, but I'm pretty good at thinking ahead in a mechanical, emotionless, cold, hard reality. Where would this go? It's like, okay, we got 0 point energy. It's released to everyone. Some people start figuring out how to control the voltage difference in the ionosphere. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? And then we have these historical, especially the Indian Vedas, where they talk about the War of Lemuria, and there was some kind of weapon that just glassed the entire world.
Right.
What could do that?
What could do that?
What could do that possibly? Well,
yeah, is this opening Pandora's box then? I mean, it sounds like we've got to be very.
Well, the Giza pyramid was probably part of a worldwide network to do this exact thing.
Okay.
I mean, you could harvest the energy benignly, but what happens when some son of a bitch genocidal maniac gets a hold of this? Yeah. And it's like, whoa, wait, I can vaporize any point on the planet at any time. And all I do is I have my little resonant sphere here, which is connected to another resonant sphere over there, which is connected to another one 1,000 times more. Eventually, it's a massive one that's connected to the ionosphere. Now I can just move my little device here, or I flick it first. You got to get the vibration activated. Dong! Right? Now it's sympathetically vibrating another sphere over there, whether it be by radio or electromagnetic. I don't know. That's probably how it worked. It was something like that. And then we have like, okay, what's the Rishot structure? And they built Atlantis over that. What if you could tap into the energy of the sun electromagnetically just by resonance?
Mm-hmm.
You could bring have the sun erupt one of those, they have those tentacles that come out of the sun, right? And those solar events.
Solar flares, yeah.
Solar flares. Imagine having one of those hit the earth and being able to, and I'm thinking about that. I'm going to the dark place. I'm like, oh shit, like cold fusion, free energy. This is good, but are we mature enough?
Right.
As
the devil's advocate argument that this technology has been suppressed for our own good.
100% it's been suppressed for our own good. I don't know about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that would be like the devil's advocate argument.
Yeah.
Where are you at in terms of because spirituality and technology you mentioned, and you already mentioned cymatics and sacred geometry and frequency and music, and that's all right up our alley. And I'm a traveling musician, so last time I was in England and Scotland, I was just like fucking like crying over the cathedrals. I mean, they're in our country too. We're in the US. They're everywhere, but there's like you go to Edinburgh and you're just like, come on, like with the spires and the geometry and the glasswork. And so like where do plasmoids fill into that?
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say so I'm just in my layman's terms like, okay, well, so they're harvesting ether energy or these are healing stations or however you want to frame it. But is that essentially plasmoid?
There's something going on there, man. There's something happening. I mean, I was in Morelia recently. Morelia is a Spanish colonial town in Mexico. And so you have these buildings were made in 1600s. And it's like what you're saying. It's old world, massive churches. And I was staring at one with my friend, and he's like, "They're antennas." And I was like, and then I'm like, "Well, actually, hang on a second." Like you look over there and you look over at like one of the old radio towers, not a cell tower, but one of the old radio towers, and you have those particular arrangements, and you look over at a church, and then you're seeing some of the same kind of things happening there. I think that the architecture of churches is cell phone caveman situation.
Yeah.
I think people were taught to build them in a specific way with specific ratios and specific measurements
on specific locations.
I don't think they were told why or how it works or what it does. Exactly. And I think when you're in a church, you feel it. And it's not because of God or Jesus or anything. It's just the building itself. And I mean, I love singing in a church. You ever sing in a church?
Yeah, of course.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Or play an instrument in a church. It's incredible. Now, that's happening sonically. What's happening electromagnetically?
Right.
Right? There could be other things going on there. What it is exactly, I'm not sure. But again, I think it's a cell phone caveman situation with the church architectures. And maybe, in cloister number 88, Friar Abagnale back in Italy, he knows the secret. Down there behind a 9-inch wooden door, scribbling away.
No, I know. There's too much synchronicity. The spire and the copper ball and the copper dome and the all that shit. All the Instagram fucking feeds that are just flying
at
you.
You want to hear a far out theory?
Yeah.
I think that there is an entire ecosystem of equivalent complexity as that you find in the Amazon electromagnetically in the ionosphere and possibly all around us.
Okay, explain that.
So life as we know it, as bags of flesh, right, is based on electromagnetic phenomena. We are electromagnetic beings. Our mitochondria essentially rip apart. It does electrolysis in our cells. And that's how we power our body. We're electrical. What prevents the same kind of complexity and intelligence forming electromagnetically without even taking on a physical body? So there's creatures, animals, intelligences on a complexity equivalent to the Amazon electromagnetically. So you got little ants that just self-organize and really have no individual intelligence. And then you have a superstructure brain, which is connected to every single star and every single planet simultaneously, running through the, faster than the speed of light. Magnetism goes faster than the speed of light. Magnetism is very difficult to explain, but it's faster. Imagine there's a number of massive brains out there thinking, manifesting ideas all the time that just don't have a physical form. How do you communicate with these? If you wanted to, they probably can do it without antenna. Have you ever been electrocuted before without really setting up the circumstances perfectly? Of course. You stick your thumb into a light and it fucking zaps you. And then you do it again the next day and it doesn't. It's like your shoes are different or your socks. So things can happen by accident. Maybe someone sitting on a mountain 25,000 years ago got struck by not lightning, but a form of electromagnetism, which got into his head. And it was like, pi, I just realized the number pi. It's infinite. The number pi is infinite. There's an autistic guy that can see it. He sees pi as an object. He doesn't see it as a number. And this is really interesting because they did experiments with him where they'd have him, he can write pi indefinitely. Like, I think he has the record 9 times over because he can just keep going, writing it. They did an experiment with him where they had a room full of chalkboards. He fills it up, right? Like the whole room, all 4 walls covered in pi. They take him out of the room. They erase a couple of the digits and change them. Like here, change one here, change one over here, change one over here. They bring him back into the room and he experiences instant physical pain.
Whoa. Instantly.
It was like it hurt him. He's like, what have you done? What have you ruined it? It was like that kind of vibe. Like you messed up my tapestry. He knew instantly. It was like it stuck out like a sore thumb, So someone sitting on a mountain 25,000 years ago, maybe a particular mountain that was, maybe it was high in magnetite. It had a a little more magnetite than average in the soil. Maybe I had a little more iron ore. I don't know. Maybe. And it's like, oh, I just thought of something. Spontaneous thought. Like maybe there's like a underlying order. There's ratios here. Maybe there's something going on. Why don't we build something here? And for some reason, I want to make it round. I want to make a round domed building here, right? There's evidence for this in not what I just said, but in a different way. If you go into a lot of the old caves where they have cave paintings from like long time ago, like 100,000 years, like we're talking dark, deep human history, because there's a lot of it. There's like 200 and arguably 250,000 years of just, we don't know shit. That's plenty of time for a massive advanced civilization to come up, and if they figured out how to completely manipulate the ionosphere and glass the entire planet by accident, maybe
reset. That's a real great reset.
Yeah. So you'll find in these caves with the cave paintings that they always seem to appear in the most resonant places. So if you were to sing or whistle, that would be the place where it sounds the best. They're like, let's paint here. So there's definitely an incentive environmentally for the progression of technology. Maybe it's a certain waterfall where the water goes up for some reason, like something weird. And they're like, this is neat. Like, and that would be something that humans, we're very curious and exploratory, and we want to understand things. These are places that we gravitate to. These are things we gravitate to. So I think that, the phenomena of music, and being that I am a musician, I write music. I don't know where it comes from. I never learned music theory. It's like it's possible that it's just recycling tones that I already heard from music I heard as a kid, but I've had weird experiences with like an entire song popping in my head, and then trying to write a song and not being able to.
Oh yeah.
Like
I'm right there with you. And ever since I was a kid, someone would say, how do you write a song? And I say, well, I just sort of hoist up my antenna and see what's there. And now the older I get, I'm like, fucking hey, dude, that is how you do it. Yeah. I've just done that since I was a kid. Why don't we get into one of the modalities that you offer through your collective is hydrogen therapy, which isn't something we've talked about. Could we steer the conversation towards Brown's gas,
sure.
hydrogen therapy, and some of your success stories there?
Yeah. So Brown's gas has been around for a little while now. It's made pretty simply. It's just electrolysis, and we have a hydrogen engineer actually mods our machines, so they put out a lot more hydrogen. And for some reason, there's lots of peer reviewed science on hydrogen, basic, like breathing hydrogen gas. It like fixes everything. And I don't mean fixes like I got a broken arm, breathe hydrogen and your arm heals like instantly. No, that's not what I mean.
Right.
But it will improve across the board. It seems it's like there's nothing that it doesn't affect in a positive way. You can apply it. You can breathe it, and what I like to do is drink it. So because I put the bubbler in there and I bubble hydrogen through the water, what am I doing? I'm structuring the water. What am I also doing? I'm introducing chaos and movement, and then the electrolyzer is introducing a ton of voltage into the water too. So now you got and into the gas itself. The gas goes into the water, and now you got electrified water. Now, I think there's a lot more to be done on, and the thing is we're up against a lot. Like it's man, we're in a tough spot. Like it's so strange. It's almost like, the higher you vibrate, like let's say, everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm vibing high, man. I'm vibing high. Like I'm vibrating good. It's like, well, here's the thing. It is like, we're alternating current beings. So it's like, however high you're vibrating the same amount on the bottom too. So as we get close to this 0 point energy and this fabulous development in plasmoid unification theory and the right now easy to do, applicable benefits that this technology has, we're also dealing with what is increasingly looking like a very evil international cabal controlling our money, controlling our medicine, controlling our media, controlling our borders, controlling our politics, controlling our military. It's very dark. And if you're really red-pilled about it, it's easy to kind of get depressed about it, or become a domestic terrorist and be a martyr, which I don't recommend. We have all that, but then we also have what looks to be like 0 point energy on the cusp of being released to everybody. It's like we have these two extremes happening at the same time. And I'm noticing that in a small way in my own life, where it's like if something really good happens, I'm like a little bit wary, because I'm like, ooh, what's going to be the balance to bring it to the 0 point, you know? Mm-hmm. So the 0 point is actually where you want to be. The 0 point is where alternating current turns into direct current, and direct current comes out of nothing, comes out of the ether. So when people are like, oh yeah, I'm vibrating high, it's like, I think what you want to do is vibrate,
middle.
Yeah. and have your amplitude done on a pedal down the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then your mental and your energy state is not jumping up and down based on exterior stimuli. Your level, but your vibration going out in the world, that can go as crazy as it wants. You want it to go crazy. You want to vibrate high, but you want to think of it like you want to do the work on your guitar. The distortion pedal is going to give it that crazy tone, or your delay pedal, or you do your post-production down there. You do your vibrating down there. You let the amplifier do the vibrating. Because if you do the vibrating, you're opening portals to all kinds of shit. I know this is getting kind of far out, but when I heard stories of these little ball lightnings like following people around. And one of the researchers working on the combustion engine said that he started having a conversation with these things, like a telepathic communication with these plasmoids, and they're trying to talk to him, and the reaction stopped. The engine started blowing out exhaust fumes like there wasn't the device on there, and then he stopped. He was like, I'm not talking to you. And then it started doing the reaction again. So they can actually interact with your thoughts. Whether there's intelligence there or not, up to speculation. More research needed, for sure. I don't think they're conscious in the way that you and I are.
We've had Sean. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Veda Austin, but we've had her on. Plenty of people in the space have had her on, and she's doing explorations and what she would call collaborations with water, and exploring the intelligence and creativity and consciousness of water, and imparting specific thoughts or feelings, or even writing on a piece of paper a word, placing that water in a freezer, and then watching what the crystallization of it, hydroglyphs basically. And the water is demonstrating over and over again that it has an intelligence, a consciousness, a creativity. And this is an example where seeing is believing, and she is empowering others and teaching others how to do this themselves. And the results are remarkable. And once you open your mind to the possibility that there's more to water than meets the eye, that water might have a consciousness and a memory and ability to store information, everything's on the table. So everything's on the table. So this idea that there might be like a diversity of organization or intelligence within the ionosphere, and the question you ask around, well, maybe we can communicate with it, maybe we cannot, or interact. Well, if we are electromagnetic beings, and we are 99.99% water molecularly, it stands to reason to me that we have built into us an innate ability to communicate with water or the electromagnetic whatever is in the ionosphere. And what you and Mike both describe as musicians, and I felt it myself just as an amateur, complete hack of a musician, the inspiration.
We're all hacks, man.
Yeah,
There's
but a song, I have written songs and I can't tell you where it came from. But all of a sudden the whole thing was right there. It was the melody, it was the line, and then all I needed to do was keep the channel open and it was all right there. What is that? There's no explanation for it. What is that? But once you start to open your mind to the possibility that something like water has consciousness, and then you go, well, we're all electromagnetic, we're all hydroelectromagnetic beings.
That's it, man.
It just stands to reason that we have the ability to connect to all these other aspects of reality.
I love cymatics. I think cymatics is the coolest thing. I just saw a insane video where someone had the bright idea of recording a beehive and then playing the beehive sound under a petri dish of water. What do you think the shape was? They organize into this kind of
hive. The hive, probably the
hexagon. Here's the shape of the hexagon. It would like phase in and out a little bit, but it was there. It was a little more complicated. It was actually quite beautiful. And it was like the bees are approximating this. Like they're trying to build what the cymatics was showing, and they're getting as close as they could. I mean, we're talking the humming of their wings.
Yes.
Is creating. I mean, you get into, how we perceive the reality that we're in is so incomplete. I mean, whales and dolphins communicate through sound, and they can speak in 3 dimensions. So imagine me being able to go like, oh, there's a pretty girl over there. And then you don't even have to see her. You know what she looks like because I just told you.
Yeah.
In that sound I made.
Yeah.
But coming back to the water has memory and sound. Oh man, there's again, it's like, why do they keep trying to discredit the ether? Because there is definitely some kind of substructure that is, it doesn't follow the rule of I throw a ball and it goes over there. Like things appear here and they appear here.
Yeah. And
it appears to be sympathetic resonance is how it works. So if I sing for, a nice A, woo, and I do it the right way, and I start vibrating my entire body, and I start electromagnetically vibrating, which I think is what the monks are trying to do when they're reaching nirvana and they're seeking nirvana, and they do their chakra they're creating vibration. Yes, it's just sound vibration, but eventually your cells start vibrating. And what does that do? When you tap on a piece of quartz, you create voltage. So they're starting to create an electromagnetic vibration. And then if they create an electromagnetic vibration that is on one of the specifically tuned frequencies to one of the specifically tuned buildings on the other side of the country, the other side of the earth, or maybe on the moon, you're now creating a network.
Yeah.
You're creating a network of essentially wireless communication. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, okay, is it religion or is it technology? I'm starting to think that the old religions are actually just forms of technology. That doesn't take anything away from it.
Not at all. I think we need to redefine technology. We need to reframe technology.
Well, that's the thing. And again, it comes back to like, the dark forces is like they're keeping like technology and spirituality, and they're keeping it in these very, very separate boxes, very, very separate boxes. But then we got Mike here, he's like creating music with guitars, but also there's wires, chords, electronics. It's technology and art can easily go together. Mm-hmm. Technology and spirituality can easily fit together. Mm-hmm. They don't need to be separate. No. I think again, it's a great time to be working in alternative health the same amount as it's a bad time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like we're vibrating very, very high right now. The entire Western, in my opinion, they've never had credibility for probably 50 years, but they've lost all credibility with probably 60, 70% of people now. I don't think trust doctors anymore.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't. They don't trust, not all of them. They don't trust hospitals, and they shouldn't. I'm from Canada originally. They essentially their mission, if you go into a hospital in Canada, is to kill you and then sell your organs. Like that, it's pretty fucking obvious. And sorry for swearing, but I think that the Canadians need to get their heads out of their asses And I'm not exactly sure how. I don't care that much because I don't live in Canada anymore, and I have no plans of ever going back there for a long time, if ever. But yeah, they're in a lot of trouble, man. It's not like, I don't want to quote Elon because everyone does, but society doesn't advance by default. It doesn't just improve on its own. There's been societal regression countless times throughout history where, things are going well, but then they're not going well. In fact, our default state of humanity is cannibalistic chaos and tribal warfare all the time. That's where we came from. That's all the wonderful things that our minds do came from creativity via self-preservation. Because if you weren't creative and you weren't innovating, you're dead. Yeah. You're dead before you're 15. You're killed and murdered by a tribe next door and then possibly eaten. A lot of people are not aware of how dark human history is, especially the two. Anthropology is a hobby of mine. I studied it in college and university a bit. A lot. I took every course. But I'm not an anthropologist per se. I don't have a piece of paper on my wall, but it's a hobby. It's very interesting to me. I want to know. I like to know, the cold truth. The problem with anthropology is you got a lot of people injecting their opinions and their religion, and they're worried about who they're going to offend. It's like bones don't lie. When you see bones that have clearly been butchered and have teeth marks on them, and there's 100,000 years of this going on in layers of dirt that the geologists have confirmed, there's no room for conjecture. We're cannibals, man. They're fucking literally eating each other, killing each other. It was savage as fuck for most of the time. And you know how easily we could slip back into that? Happened in Russia.
It's happening. It's happening in Haiti right now, apparently. Haiti is completely dissolved and there is cannibalism. This is if you believe everything you hear on the news, but
there might indeed well be. If there's starvation, there's cannibalism.
It's widespread now that it's what they call anarchy and cannibalism.
Cannibalism appears in as little as 7 days of starvation.
Yeah,
it takes 7 days for your next door neighbor that you helped water their garden to fucking eat you if there's no food in the grocery store. That's how bad it gets, how fast it gets. And we have examples. We have Russia. When they're doing the same thing there as they're doing right now in Canada. They're trying to, and in Holland, they're making the farmers unprofitable. They can't even farm. Fees, license, bureaucracy. They're de-incentivizing farmers. What do they do? So they're like, oh, the government's going to manage the farms now. You guys get the hell out of here. It was called the dekulakalization. Any Russian history buffs will know all about this. Anyway, they went into a horrible famine, especially in the north, and people were eating their children.
Yeah.
Pretty horrible. Yeah. So society to progress, maintain and progress and prosper, it takes effort. It takes people actually caring. It takes people putting in the time to innovate, putting in the time to spread the word and connect to the researchers, connect the A's to the B's. Not all of us are going to be CNC manufacturing physicist, genius manufacturer guys. But not all those CNC genius manufacturer guys are going to have the social skills or the business wherewithal to get those ideas out in a way that benefits people and benefits them, hopefully. I think people should be rewarded for their effort.
Yep.
We have, and I mean, that's why I'm talking about this right now on your show. I think that, so I'm going to, I don't know. Should I send you some links? Like, could you put them in the description?
Yeah, show notes. You've already shared.
Yeah. Because I got a couple channels that I'm pulling this information out of that are updating a lot. They're active channels. One of them is Jordan. He's an Australian guy, not unlike ourselves, a fellow explorer, and he's covering the advancement of the plasmoid technology very closely. I'm following it very closely because we use a hydrogen machine which uses electrolysis, and I'm wondering if the health benefits of this device is actually because of the plasmoids more than it is because of the structured water or the hydrogen gas itself. It might just be because of the the electric fields that you're getting in? And if so, is there a way that we can improve on it and make it better?
Yeah, that was my, that was what I wanted to bring it around to before we start wrapping is you've talked about the energy implications, but what are the potential health implications of this research into plasmoids?
Well, I mean, the benefits right now of just breathing the gas itself that we have, which is probably errant plasmoids. There's 100% there's plasmoids in there. They're just random ones, and they occur naturally. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's the famous rat study, which they put rats on drinking Brown's gas water and breathing Brown's gas. Brown's gas it's mostly hydrogen, but there's also some oxygen ions in there, right? So you
HHO,
have different configurations.
HHO?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. HHO, H2O2. There's little bits of, so they just say Brown's gas because it's more encompassing. And if I was to say breathe hydrogen, it wouldn't be entirely accurate because there's oxygen in there too.
Yeah.
Anyways, the lifespan of the rats increased by 200%. So they lived twice as long. I mean,
yeah.
What's the difference between humans and rats?
Sure. And so what you are wondering is, again, is it the hydrogen? Is it the Brown's gas itself, or is it maybe the plasmoid?
Yeah. And there's like I said, there's tons of science showing beneficial things are happening, like with fighting cancer and hormone regulate, like anti-inflammatory stuff. So if you have autoimmune problems, that's a big one. I came into alternate health knowing nothing, full of autoimmune problems because I was eating shit. And I was being poisoned at every angle, not even realizing it. Like I now know, pretty much everything in a gas station is quite literally poisonous. Like the food, I mean, like in a gas station convenience store, it's very difficult to buy any actual food. Like stuff that, do you know the person that grow? Like I'm really lucky right now where I mostly know the person that grows most of the food that I eat. And I definitely don't drink tap water, for Christ's sakes. Stop drinking tap water. Step 1. Okay. They put so much, I mean, it's not even that they put stuff in it. It's just the nature of the way that it's transported is, you shouldn't be drinking that stuff.
No,
you just shouldn't be drinking it.
Yes.
I mean, I know a friend of mine, Derek Bros, who, he runs the Greater Reset, and he's also a journalist. He's a great guy. Recommend looking him up. He's following around a court case for, they're still putting fluoride in the water. Fluoride does nothing to help you. You know what the logic was for that? Well, if we put fluoride in glue, it makes glue harder. So it's good for your teeth. Mm-hmm. That's the science. That's the science they used. When meanwhile, the actual science they used was they found that it gives people brain damage. It makes you retarded and passive.
Calcifies the pineal gland.
Sure. Yeah. They use it in jails, man. They use it in prison camps to keep people sedated.
Yeah. No, I would
put it in drinking water. It's like Jesus Christ, the depths of the evil that we're dealing with here. I mean, again, it's like when you're starting going down these rabbit holes, and you start opening your eyes and seeing things. It's like, don't get depressed. Okay, get mad. Maybe I think getting mad's good. For if you're a guy, because then you go and work out, right? Go and take care of your temple. Use the anger. And then you're not going to be mad anymore after you do 15 pull-ups. You're not.
No.
That anger will be gone. So use the anger. If it makes you angry, use the anger and work out. Okay? Because because if you just sit in a chair and start taking in how much actual opposition we have and how much evil we're actually dealing with, because it's a lot, man, and it goes deep, and it's like all the money we use is fake. Like, holy shit. We could be rug pulled at like any friggin' moment here. Luckily, there's a lot of white hats out there. There's more good in the world than there is bad, by a long shot.
Yeah.
We would fall apart. We'd be extinct if there was more evil than good. There's way, way more good. Most people want the same things. We're not that different.
No.
We just want to be able to have a nice family and enjoy our lives and pursue the interests that we want to do without being oppressed or stolen from or taken advantage of, or like, it's pretty simple. I'm pretty sure 99.99% of humans want the same thing. It's not rocket science, right? But the thing is we're in this system that's making just living the way we want really difficult. And I mean, if you're from Canada, you're being genocided. So they want you dead. They want you dead, and they're trying to kill you in every way they can without going to your house and putting a bullet in your head, which I think is coming down the pipe, by the way. I think they're going to get there. They're building all kinds of scary buildings in the prairies, like big jails, interrogation jails set up. I've seen the plans. The people building these things are blue collar tradespeople. I'm an electrician. I know these people. I know one that worked on a giant jail in Kitimat, British Columbia. You can look it up. Huge facility being built by what she thinks is the Chinese. There's Chinese soldiers there, and it's a jail. And what's funny is they treated them like inmates. And she was a carpenter, and they were like, they weren't allowed to take their phones out. Like weird shit. But the thing is like, these guys are, I mean, as much as a jail that size is scary, you got to remember that it's just human beings, man. It's just some fucking guy that puts his pants on and takes a shit in the morning, that goes in there and turns the lights on. They're people. And if you can get through to the people, you don't need to worry about the big scary building anymore. But that's the thing, is we need to make sure that the people are not naively walking into a slaughterhouse, which I mean, I'm just so disgusted with all that the past 3 years. I don't want to talk about it too much, but on a spiritual and a existential way, it affected me. Where my grandfather is a veteran of the Second World War, which I really respect him for surviving it and doing what he thought was right. I now know that this entire Second World War was all horse shit. It was one big sacrifice ritual. Let's kill as many people as possible. The more, the better. They glassed half of Japan, 2 cities in Japan. Countless Europeans shooting each other, brothers shooting brothers, like absolute madness. And when you start pulling apart that wire, that rat's nest of wires of like what really happened, because there's so much bullshit to get through. Everything Hollywood makes is horse shit, all lies. Maybe specific battles and what happened in those battles is true, but the circumstances of the war itself, the relationship between Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, the French president, whoever that was, and the Americans, and their relationship with Japan and China and so forth, the major players, and what really kicked in, and then what happened in the First World War, and then the involvement of what looks to be a cartel funding each side all over the world simultaneously. It's like, oh my God, it was a fucking psyop. There were no Nazis. There was no Holocaust. A lot of people died in concentration camps. That's true. Why? Because they couldn't get food into the country because they were in a military blockade. So people starved to death. And then there was a typhus outbreak.
Yeah.
But I mean, the lies around that, it makes you wonder, like, why would you lie about that? Like, it was terrible. All those people died, innocent young kids and innocent people being thrown into camps and arrested because of their religion or color or whatever. Like, that's horrible. But why would you exaggerate? What's the point of that? What is the point of that? That's like saying, yeah, I lost my leg in a car accident. And it's like, no, it was not a car accident. It was a race car. It was a race car accident with 5 other race cars involved, and they all lost their legs too. And it's like, why? What is the end game here? And as you start peeling through these layers, it's not a religion thing. It's something else, man. It's like they use religions as a way to hide. Oh, we're Christians. We're this, we're that. Like, it's them, it's these guys, it's this. It's so everyone's trying to point their fingers And we're pointing our fingers at each other is what's happening. While a very, very, very small group of very sickly, weak, inbred people are pulling the strings of our banking system. I think crypto, is another aspect of that wide vibration. We're looking at total ruination, slavery, freedom up here, old fiat banking system, cryptocurrency, same time, So what side are you going to choose? Right? I would like to stay here,
in the middle,
stay close to the zero. Stay close to the zero. And
well, in nature, we see the movement towards homeostasis in our bodies. The bodies are always trying to restore balance and find homeostasis, and that is where health is, and that is where what is evolutionarily stable resides, is in homeostasis and balance.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you have we have the forces of nature kind of on our side here. I think subjugation and oppression are while sure it works, I don't think it's natural.
No, they're antithetical,
I don't think it's
aren't they?
sustainable because it's unethical. It's it's against human nature to hurt each other. It really is. Sure, there's a violent streak in us from reasons, debatable reasons. There's more than one species of human, for instance. There's a lot. There's like at one point there's probably like 15 different kinds of humanoid. Like we're talking elves, gnomes, like it was like a Lord of the Rings novel. Orcs, right? That's what it would have been like. Like these people are they're kind of like you, but they're horrifyingly scary, and they're So the reason that our particular flavor of humanity that we have today is because we managed to get through that predator phase, but we still have that evolutionary hangover, you could say. We're always, there's a really interesting book about how it's postulated that Neanderthals actually shaped what are modern humans. Because Neanderthals were occupying Europe for almost 2 million years before anatomically modern humans got in there, right? So they're the old guard of Europe, and humans back in the day were smaller. Like they're smaller than we are now. Like we're actually Neanderthal admixture. We interbred with them eventually. So we were like little pissant weakling losers coming in from the south, and the Neanderthals were like, big jacked, thick armed. They didn't believe in throwing technology, which is interesting because that was not honorable. It wasn't honorable in Neanderthal culture to kill your prey from a distance. You want to get in close, get in intimate, right? So you get all these gnarly injuries in their skeletons. Like they're always like broken ribs, arm broken 5 times. These guys are taking on mammoths like head to head without throwing spears. They're doing it with, and I suspect that was a cultural thing. Some anthropologists say they couldn't even throw, like their shoulder wasn't designed to throw. Oh, by the way, how many guys do you know can't like throw fairly accurately by default?
Yeah, until they're taught, like, right? Unless you have exhaustive lessons.
Not even taught. Not even taught. No, I mean, like almost all men, even kids, like 6-year-old boy can throw a rock pretty fucking accurately.
Yeah, they figure that out really quickly, don't they?
They figure that out very quickly. It's almost like if you can't throw a rock accurately, you're not going to make it. So that I think that was an evolutionary bottleneck. I think that males in particular that couldn't throw a projectile were wiped out and just they didn't make it. So now, I mean, unless you got a birth defect or something, but like pretty much all guys can throw accurately. And if you go to the plains in the savannah and you walk around with some tribes guys, how do you think they make the lions not attack them?
Keep them at a distance.
They throw rocks at them.
Yeah.
You being a lion in the head with a rock?
Yeah, it's gone.
At 40 feet? It doesn't know what the hell just happened. It's scared out of its mind. So, it's arguable that we came into existence on the savannas, right? Being able to throw a rock and being a hyena at 100 paces, Well,
it gives you
so
an evolutionary advantage for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways, we have a bit of a hangover, I think, from the dark periods of humanity that we need to shed, because we still have this tribalism thing, and you really see it. It's interesting when you go into like high schools or go into the youth. It's in a way, you're going back in time. You're going back in time sociologically. You're going back in time evolutionarily. The teenagers are more close to their animalistic default setting humans. And look at how teenagers act in high school. It's certainly different than how adult people, well, not all of them, but like I went to a high school that was, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like upper class, right? Like we had jail guys sometimes, and the females loved the dumbass jail guys. How does that make any sense at all? These are dumb idiots that are going to go nowhere in life. I know three of them that were in my high school are dead now. One got stabbed to death at a gas station. Another guy OD'd on some G or some terrible drug. I don't know. Like these guys they're not good partners. But why are the females flocking after? Why? And it's because being big and dangerous is attractive.
Yeah.
Because it presses nature's buttons. The females don't even know. You can ask them, why do you like that guy? You know, he fractured some kid's skull the other day for no reason. Why do you like him? I don't know. Like they can't verbalize it.
I'm attracted to the bad boy.
I get butterflies.
Yeah.
It's like, well, so you have to understand that nature may not care about what we consider good society. And we didn't live in a good society for most of the time that we've existed as a entity on this planet. So maybe this is like the time where it's like we haven't really fully, truly ascended. We've had a few people maybe have figured out Siddhartha, Gautama. I think the legend of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Jesus.
The more that I look into it, I think he went to India and became a Buddhist, and then he brought Buddhism back to the Middle East. And there's a lot to that. If you look at a lot of the stuff he says, it's very likely he disappeared for, I think, 10 years. And he came back in his 30s, right? Is according to the legend. I think he went to India and he became a Buddhist. He came back a Buddhist and he was teaching Buddhism. There's no Christianity. He was just teaching Buddhism. So in Buddhism, you have people that have figured out how to vibrate their bodies enough so that they become more into their electromagnetic body, because you have an electromagnetic body. It may not be inside your body per se, or probably moves in and out and if you're really centered and you got your chakras all tuned, precisely is what the Buddhas tell you to do, right? Then you can be more, I guess you could say, congruent with your spirit side. And then, I mean, that strange thing where you're like, oh, I just got a song pop in my head. Instead of that being random, that's something that you could access at all times because you're congruent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the word coherent as well. When we were talking about structured water earlier, that's another word that people use as coherent water.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's spin. Like, have you ever put water into a Tibetan singing bowl and then gone, woo? Okay. So if you do it long enough, it'll start bubbling. Like you get the cymatic patterns, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool. But it'll start getting more and more chaotic. And then you get this almost like a boil effect going on. It's not hot, like the water's not heating up, but you get this boiling effect. And it takes a little while to get it going. You got to hold the vibration long enough. Now, what's interesting is you let it settle. You stop doing the bowl. You let it settle. If you come back in 5 minutes and then do it again, instead of taking 10, 15, 30 seconds to start the boil, like start doing the craziness, it does it instantly. The water has remembered. The water has remembered the vibration, or the water is still vibrating. And what you think of vibration, I now know because I'm looking at, I'm looking closer and closer at this plasmoid theory, is that vibration is actually rotation. So think like a top defying gravity. But imagine, okay, so you got a donut, right? You got your toroid, but then you got another toroid around that toroid, another toroid around that toroid, another toroid around that toroid, until you have this crazy gear looking thing that's spinning. And then you have the machine elf you saw on your last DMT trip.
Accurate.
So there was another topic, I think, that you wanted to bring up.
Well, I think just general, and to bring this back to health before we bring this ship into port.
Oh yeah. Okay. So my routine.
Yeah. Your non-negotiables. What are your daily habits?
Non-negotiables. Okay. The non-negotiables, 100% never, ever, ever drink tap water. I would even avoid drinking water out of plastic. Drink it out of water, or a glass rather. And if you can get mountain spring water, drink that. If you can structure your water, that helps. It's kind of an individual thing, I think like when it comes to like diets and stuff, because we have different phenotypic digestive systems. Something that works for someone will not work for someone else. Like the variety, the genius of nature is variety. So having my digestive system seems to be more, unfortunately, carnivorous. I seem to do well on a more meat based diet, because I get eczema. If I eat bread, I get rashes like instantly. I suspect that's from mold, because there's trace amounts of mold in bread. And what does mold make? Mold makes penicillin. Mold makes antibiotics. And a lot of people are subtly allergic to antibiotics. And the thing is with the autoimmune thing is like, you don't necessarily have to have your hands turn into balloons and have sores all over your body. Like you can be going through an allergic reaction on a really small level all the time, which I think a lot of people are. Especially when you have people that are like, they're not fat, but they're like pudgy. They're carrying a lot of water weight. That's inflammation. Is their immune system is running at 110%. It's like overclocking your computer. Any computer guys out there know it's like running your computer overclocked all the time with inadequate cooling. That's what's happening. So you have this like essentially a inflammation epidemic going on. We're getting assaulted on all levels by bad wavelengths. They could, this is something that I would like to do, and maybe I'll plant the seed, steal this idea. I don't care. But imagine having a line of electronics, monitors, everything, and instead of just arbitrarily tuned or in arbitrary numbers of voltage and they're tuned to the sacred numbers, the ancient numbers. Why don't we tune them to that? Why don't we tune our computer monitors, our radios, our everything to these healthy frequencies that we know exhibit beneficial effects on life? Right now, we're doing an experiment giving Brown's gas water to plants. I'm really looking forward to the results on that. I don't know yet. I suspect the plants are going to do better with it. But what's interesting is a lot of the metabolism, the energy that a plant uses and you use is actually spent structuring the water. How much of the water that you drink actually stays in your body? You piss most of it out. The water that stays in your body takes a ton of electromagnetic and chemical energy to structure and arrange in a way that can be used by the metabolic process of your cells. It takes a lot of, so that's, the cool thing about the Brown's gas hydrogen machine is you get those ions for free without the energy expenditure. So your mitochondria can use them right away. Because it's structured, it gets absorbed in your stomach instead of your intestine, right? So, you can absorb water through through your stomach if it's good. If it's good water. If it's not structured, that won't happen, and you'll just piss it out. Anyways, so I avoid bread. I avoid. Oh, and okay, so this is a good one. When I wake up in the morning, this comes straight from Paul Roy. He's a fantastic practitioner. He's got tons of great advice. You can find some of his content on our Rumble channel. But when you get up in the morning, the first light that goes into your eyes should be pure sunlight, because what this does is it sets a clock on your well, it affects your endocrine system. It's your circadian rhythm. It's like the timer of your circadian rhythm. Taking in light rays of the sun in the morning is going to set your circadian rhythm up properly. It's going to set you up for success. You don't have to do this. But if you're having trouble falling asleep at night, or you're getting extremely tired at strange times in the day, or you're feeling uncontrollably hungry all the time, it's probably your circadian rhythm is all messed up. And your body literally doesn't know what time it is, because most people roll out of bed and they check their phone.
Yeah.
First thing they look at is this like ugly wavelength blue, excessive blue light, non-complete blue light, right? Like when you look at the sun, you could sort of say that it's blue light in a way, but the sun has all the wavelengths, literally all of them. So I can make a cell phone show white, but it doesn't have all the wavelengths. So it's not a healthy white. Mm-hmm. A healthy white is pure sunlight. So first thing you do when you wake up, as long as it's like early, and the sun's still kind of low, Paul gets up at sunrise, goes down to the beach barefoot, sticks his feet into the sand to absorb there's a massive wave of ionic energy that happens when the sun changes the earth from light to dark. So think of it like an invisible wave being pushed as the sun moves over the earth, and there's a wave of ionic energy in the earth's crust, under your feet, in the dirt. And if you get up in the morning, you can catch that wave. And that's why a lot of people swear by that. They like to watch the sunrise in their bare feet. What they're doing is they're catching a huge amount of free ions out of the ground, right? You take in some of that sun, now your circadian rhythm is set. I do that every day. I make sure the first light I look at, I work a lot on a computer. I do podcasts like you guys. I do a lot of video editing. I'm on the computer a lot. Kind of sucks. So I'm very on about getting that first light during the day. Once the sun goes down, computer monitor goes into yellow mode, goes into night mode. That's another important one, because you'll really mess up your hormones if you unless I'm color correcting or doing something where I absolutely need the accuracy. I put the monitor on night mode when it starts getting late at night, and I'm starting to chill out for the night. And honestly, you won't even notice it once you change it. After 20 minutes, you won't even realize you changed it. Like, it looks almost the same, and just cuts out some of that harmful blue light, which tricks your brain and messes up your hormones. Yeah. Messing up your hormones is not something to be trifled with. No. By the way. That's that. We're not going to get into that. Okay. But yeah, don't mess with your hormones. You want to take care of your hormones. You want your body to know what time it is during the day. Take care of your hormones. Okay. What's another one? I definitely make sure that I do. I do something that makes me physically tired, at least once a day. If I don't do that, I can't fall asleep. So if you're having trouble falling asleep, it's probably because you didn't exercise enough. You got too much energy. You need to go out and exercise, man. Just go out and make yourself tired. Especially if you're like, even if you're a skinny guy, it doesn't matter. You need to it doesn't need to be a lot. Like, just run around the block a couple times so you can feel your legs, right? Use some energy. Okay. That one's important. Every day, exert yourself at some point. What else? I drink a lot of fresh juice. Like we juice fresh fruit. Definitely, if you can get fresh food, do that. I use natural toothpaste. I supplement with I've been trying out lion's mane. Mm-hmm. Actually, I just finished my lion's mane. I got some lion's mane triple extraction. That's for brain health.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you guys out there that use your brains a lot, I think I'll have to use it more to notice anything. But and then obviously we have a whole line of frankincense products. None of them is available on the internet. But I take frankincense hydrosol, which is the liquid. It's like the water base that you get when you create oil. You end up with a hydrosol. So every oil that's made also has a byproduct called a hydrosol. You have olive oil hydrosol. You can have rose oil hydrosol, blah, blah, blah. I have frankincense oil hydrosol. And I use that in my eyeballs and spray it on my teeth. It's amazing. It's really nice. It's anti-inflammatory. It's got all kinds of crazy anti-cancer properties too. Accelerates apoptosis, which is unhealthy cell death. So when you have cells that are hanging around and staying alive for too long and not being churned over, it causes problems, which can worst case scenario is cancer. The cancer is essentially rogue cells that just lost the ability to kill themselves properly. Like that process is helped out, which is apoptosis in fancy science terms. That is healthy cell elimination. And frankincense has an effect on that. The resin, frankincense, which is interesting, is actually it comes from a tree. Okay, so it's like a woody shrub, small tree that grows in the worst environments, dry, there's bad environments, and what they do is they slice the tree bark, and then it makes like a scab of resin, and they harvest a lot of other things this way. It's the same thing with rubber trees, right? It's the same thing. So that sap that the tree puts out to clog the wound is what, 50 million years of an immune system evolution. You're using the immune system of an ancient creature and then using it for yourself. So that's why frankincense is amazing for like healing and wounds, and it's an antibacterial and antifungal and all these properties. It's because you're just taking another creature's incredible immune system and then using it for yourself. There's probably other plants out there that are even better that we just haven't found yet. The Amazon, I know for a fact, is full of these kinds of things. So there's like a cream that you put on cold sores called a Breva. And it's like a fancy pharmaceutical. No, it's not. It's a plant extract. It's just they packaged it to look like a drug, but it's actually just a plant extract. And they just found another plant that has similar properties in the Amazon. I'm hoping to get down there and actually do a little story about it. It's a stuff called dragon's blood. It's really neat. Anyways, I'm going on tangents again.
Yeah. No, it's like so much of the pharmaceutical industry is really just synthesized
plant extracts, and sometimes they don't even synthesize it.
Yeah.
They just put it in like a doctory, white looking, stale, ugly box.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like when you start getting into the pharmaceutical, you realize, like I worked with some of these types in university, and it's just mysticism. It's like, I'm a graphic designer. I can make something look like a Pfizer drug box easily, man. Just put a couple triangles, use that particular font. Like I mean, we're going into this terrible place where we're putting our technology on a pedestal where we don't understand it and don't know what it is, and we don't know who's behind it. It's just like, oh, I just use Windex. It's like, what is Windex? I don't know. I just put it on the windows. It makes it clean. It's like, don't be like that. Know what it is. It's ammonia. There's ammonia in Windex. That's what makes it a cleaning agent. Learn some shit. Know the stuff you're using. Don't trust these fancy, shiny boxes that some idiot like me can easily make you think is super advanced and outside of your ability to understand. Okay? It's not like that. It's really pretty simple. But the important thing is like, I think people need to be more curious and less naive. It's so, especially now. We got guns surrounding us in all kinds of ways, culturally, physically, if you're in Canada or Australia or England, or actually I think England is kind of coming to its senses, which is weird. But
well, for the curious folk out there who want to know more about you, where should they go?
Well, definitely check us out. I'm the creative director at IHealCollective. So I've been putting together teams of practitioners that really inspire me and health people, like doctors, natural doctors, NDs, chiropractors, naturopaths. So we have a team of people there that are very, very talented, very good practitioners. A lot of neat esoteric stuff too. And you can find me on Rumble. I have a show called Jab Rehab. Maybe like 1 or 2 shows a month. Try and do it more, but it's a lot of work setting these up. I know you know, but I have some pretty neat conversations in there that I did in Acapulco. I just released one with Ecuadorian guy. His name is Yoshi Pantera, and he's a really interesting one. So there's lots of good content on there. You can also see me rant a bit. I'll go on rants. And I don't hold anything back. That's why I really like the Rumble platform.
Yeah.
I'm kind of starting to just not care about YouTube anymore. And yeah, so you can find me on Rumble. It's Jab Rehab, JABREHB, or you can just search IHealCollective. That is the same channel. That's where you can find us. And I will be probably reporting some more on plasmoid unification theory stuff, but it's an entire science. Like it's an entire 6-year PhD. So it's very difficult to just dip in for 2 months and then speak authoritatively on it, which I'd never intend to do. And proper scientific method is to never be authoritative.
Mm-hmm.
We're always trying to just get closer to the truth. We can't decide that we have the truth, because then the science stops. The process doesn't work anymore. So I'll be covering some of that, and definitely look it up. Just type plasmoid unification theory on YouTube, find it, get excited, because it's a paradigm shift in humanity. I really think it could be the difference. It could be like we're going to be Atlantean, floating around on golden platforms and teleporting and possibly immortality. Oh my God. Imagine being able to tune your mitochondria back to the same health as when you were born, right? Or tune up, like DNA is arguably a crystal. It's a that could probably resonate sympathetically. Well, they know 528 is the resonance of DNA, right? So maybe we should tune our pianos to 528 and play some love songs and heal our DNA.
There it is. There it is. That's a beautiful vision. Sean Allman, thank you for coming in, dipping your toes in this plasmoid unification theory.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It was a pleasure and a half. Cheers, boys. Right on.
All right, folks. It's the after party in the plasmoid room.
Yes, definitely a different room.
For this episode, we are in the plasmoid room.
Yeah, fuck yeah, hanging out with the pistol shrimp.
Hanging out with the pistol shrimp. The other, I don't know if it's the same species, but the mantis shrimp was the one that I was aware of.
Okay. That
had the same action with like its claw, and it can crack through aquarium glass and creates the cavitation. I don't know if it's just the same name for the same creature, but the mantis shrimp was the one I was aware of.
Okay.
But apparently there's maybe the ocean is teeming with plasmoid creating murderous shrimp.
Probably.
Tell you what, it's not on that cocktail tray.
No, folks, we can't lie. We did this conversation a week ago, and so we're just getting around to the after party now. But if we were doing the after party immediately following, I think you and I would both started off with, what the actual fuck just happened there? What was that conversation?
So yeah, Victoria Quinn, who came on and had a terrain transformation talk with us, was down in Mexico with Anthony Samaroff, another guy who's been on a couple times. They're working on a fertility workshop that they're hosting down there. And Sean Allman is one of the folks that they brought in to help create this fertility workshop. And Victoria sent me just like a voice memo. It was like an MP3 15-minute recording she had captured of basically Sean just going off a little bit about plasmoid unification theory. She's like, hey, you should think about getting this guy on. I listened to the 15 minutes and it kind of blew my mind. And so I reached out and he's like, yeah, happy to come on. Now I'm glad that he was able to bring it around to health. Cause I mean, this is alternative health podcast, but I would argue, I mean, you and I both talk about free energy all the time, and unlocking that, I think, opens so many doors. And so I think just health is so related to energy. We know this, right?
Come on. It is that. Yeah. They're almost interchangeable. Yeah.
It's almost interchangeable. So trying to unravel these mysteries around plasmoids and plasmoid unification theory, it's not that great a stretch, folks. And you know what? Sometimes we can meander.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we meandered quite a bit, but I think free thinkers who were trying to unravel the puzzle of delusion that's been cast upon the Kali Yuga age.
There it is.
I mean, I think we're at liberty to meander, to sort of get to where we got to get. So, yeah. I mean, you and I joke that we should have a separate side channel called the Red Pill Room that is more in the meandering space.
Well, we do. It's the texts. The text thread is our Red Pill Room.
Exactly. Yeah, but also we talk almost every episode about the how detrimental delusion can be, and so you can really only get to the bottom of something by really like hashing it out and trying to obliterate what the delusion that we've sort of been raised with.
Yeah, well, and the openness of one's mind to a conversation like this, to the possibilities, it begins with like, again, we talk about this, like, do you trust everything that you read in the news? Do you trust everything? Folks I know still basing their conversations, their foundation of knowledge on what they read in the New York Times every day, or like what they've been told in a National Geographic magazine or like Science magazine. And that's just mainstream shit. And you're not going to read about someone capturing all the carbon coming out of a V6 engine using like some plasmoid thunderstorm generator. Like that's not, unless you're like going down YouTube holes,
the dark part of the internet, right?
The dark part of the internet, you're not going to be exposed to this. And you probably, if you are, you're going to reject it because you weren't exposed to it via one of those mainstream channels.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been saying recently, I think I just dropped it on an Alex Zek thread today. The things you're not allowed to question are where the corruption seeps in the deepest, period.
Yeah.
That's my new mantra almost.
Yeah. It's well said.
Yeah. It's funny because we started the conversation. I mean, first of all, I don't know if we'll air video of this chat. I know sometimes we do. But like he had the backdrop of like, he was like in the Millennium Falcon, which is funny in and of itself. And I don't know, it was a long conversation, hour and a half or so. Towards the end, I was like, in my mind, he was just there. He was just out there floating through some space that I was not cognizant of or part of it. He was just there. It wasn't just a backdrop. But we started talking about music and 432. And I couldn't help but chuckle because he told the story about his band that, they would do performances at 432 and he really felt like it literally resonated deeper and more profoundly with audiences. And that translated into getting different types of opportunities and gigs. And I have felt that too. What is funny is that the electric keyboard that is basically industry standard at this point, and I'm sure if you've been to a concert in the last 5 years, you've seen one. If the band has a keyboard player, it's called a Nord, Nord, and they're red. They're like, that's their signature sort of branded.
Is that what Will Bryant uses in your band?
That's what Will Bryant plays. That's what our buddy Scott Malisi plays, who also plays in the band. That's what we own one for the studio, and our son will use it occasionally, and it's a Nord. Now they are programmable, so you can change their key, unlike an acoustic piano. But guess what? You can't program it to
432.
You can program it to 431.9.
Get
but
out.
But you can't program it to 432. It's fucking crazy.
Oh, I'm sorry. How does that work? How do you see what you're programming it to and realize that you can't go to 432?
It's just a little digital dial, right? With up and down arrows.
Okay.
But it won't let you go 432. I haven't actually done it myself. I've just watched my bandmates sort of like hit their head against the wall going like, why can't we do 432? You can go above it and you can go below it, but you can't do 432.
So you'll go like from 431.9 to like 432.1?
I guess. Yeah. I wonder what the upper echelon is. I'm not sure.
That's insane.
Yeah,
So
we'll find out for the next time.
As a band, then how do you get around that? Like the rest of you tune directly to 432, and you just feel like the fraction of a percentage off is not that big a deal.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we're playing. Ruthie plays the fiddle, and I play an acoustic guitar. It's like these things aren't like precision tuned instruments anyway. It's not like we're playing.
You're a precision tuned instrument, but the guitar is not.
Not with this shoulder right now. We're working on getting back, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's all sort of ballpark.
Sure.
But I have noticed, because we record all of our shows, we just throw some microphones out in the field for posterity, really. And some of them come out great and some of them don't. The sound of the room has a lot to do with how well a room recording comes out. Go figure. Mm-hmm. But the ones that are recorded at 431.9, they have a different sort of congealing vibe, especially like we do sound for ourselves a lot of time. You just like, no one's like looking after it and dialing it in and making sure. And there's like, I find that doing sound at that reference point, things just sound a little better, a little sweeter, a little more natural. It's less of an uphill battle to like get everything to play nice.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I wanted to include that in our conversation here, because there's definitely I've experienced that as well, what he was talking about.
When did the Mammals change from 440 to 432? When did you make that change?
I mean, it's been in the last couple of years, like during the life of the podcast,
Yeah. And was there pushback ever by any of the bandmates?
Not a little bit of like eye rolling maybe. But no one cared that much to not try it. You know what I mean? We don't do it every show.
Okay.
If we have a real piano on stage, we can't do it. And we like to use a real piano because they're beautiful and piano players like to play them.
Can you tell, sorry, just to interrupt real quickly, can you tell when you have a piano on stage just by, what do you play? The A, right? The A note. Can you tell if it's tuned to 432 or 440 based on just hearing it?
Well, I've never heard a piano tuned to 432. Most piano tuners won't do it.
They won't.
Because it's so low and pianos are optimized for a certain tension it'll inherently just sort of creep back up.
Oh,
and you could probably spend a year or two sort of massaging it down.
Is that right?
Because when we did the Summer Hoot 2021 and we had a real piano on stage, and it was a piano that I picked up at a thrift store. So it was mine and it was small. It's called a Spinet. I wanted him to tune it to 432. I was like, let's do the whole weekend at 432.
Okay.
But he thought, with this old piano that's been at 440 for 60 years, to get it to play nice and like settle was going to be a Herculean job, as within a week. It wasn't going to stay.
So if you had a piano that was newly constructed, then that would be the time. And it didn't know anything
else. Exactly.
That would be the time to do it. Okay.
Yeah. And I know Jude Roberts, he inherited, I think his father's piano. Shout out Jude. And he's been talking about tuning it to 432 for a long time because it's already old and out of tune and it's sunk low. So it would be sort of bringing it up to 432 instead of tamping it down. You know what I mean?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that's wild to think about, that you are limited. You are limited then based on the instrument that you have on stage. And so all these concert pianos, like if you go to watch an orchestra or you go to watch like a concert pianist, the chances are you're hearing it all in 440.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. Well, that's blame the Rockefellers, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I'm stoked that your band is just kind of behind it. Like maybe there was a little bit of eye rolling initially, but now it's just how you do.
I think
how
so.
the mammals roll.
We don't always do it. It is an adjustment. I do find after 30 years of singing in 440, if we're suddenly in 432, I sing really sharp because my vocal cords are used to
just
being
trained.
Yeah, like the grooves in the road. You know what I mean? So you sort of have to focus a little bit more and like listen a little bit more, and not just like phone it in or just fall into.
I had not
muscle
considered
memory.
that. Yeah, I had not considered that.
It's not just as simple as just tuning differently. Also, my instrument, I would probably put heavier strings on if we were going to do that regularly, because you tune it down just that much, the strings get a little floppier and they don't intonate as much. It comes into like recalibrating the tools to be optimized at that point.
Has Ruthie ever remarked on that as well? The challenge of singing 432 after singing 440?
Definitely. Yeah, it's a thing. For the new record, because we recorded the first 6 songs a year ago using the real piano at 440, and for this next batch of songs, which we just recorded a couple weeks ago, we didn't use the piano because I was delinquent in getting it tuned. So it's actually like up at 444 right now. It's really sharp. So we used the Nord, and we had the opportunity to be at 431.9, but we thought, do we really want half the record at 440 and half it? And we're like, no, we don't. Let's be consistent. So
I would agree. Be consistent.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Now I have heard that like Bob Marley recorded at 432, and I haven't actually verified that, but I've heard it. And I know that a lot of our favorite bands like Nirvana, Kurt would put like huge strings on his guitar and tune the guitar way lower, such that if you're watching a video and it looks like he's playing a G chord, it's actually like an E flat or something. So like musicians are always tinkering with the standard tunings.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as like granular as 432 versus 440, but often with a lot of our favorite recordings and music, it's not just like what the guitar sounds like when you pull it off the wall at Guitar Center. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mike, if you wanted to know if Bob Marley tuned to 432, how would you go about doing that?
I would put on a song and find the root and sing it into my phone and see where it came up.
You would sing the root into your phone?
I would sing the root into a tuner on my phone, a tuner that was set to 432.
Got it.
Because you can calibrate the tuners, the digital tuners, really easily and see if it's plumb or not.
Yeah, I have a tuner on my phone, and I was playing around with I was trying to figure out like a Tom Petty song, and I was playing it on my guitar. I'm like, why does that? I know that's the chord. Why does it sound so off? And I checked my tuner and realized that I had adjusted my tuner to 432, and I think he was playing in 440.
Yeah, it's off-putting, isn't it?
It's very off-putting.
For one, I think the 2022 Summer Hoot, the Mammals tuned to 432, because that's probably like when we were like first hot on it, like right away. And there's like house music on, it's like Saturday Night Festival. There's like a lot of background noise. There's like loud house music while we're sort of like getting tuned up. And I was trying to tune my guitar. I'm like, this fucking thing won't get in tune. Like, and I'm like stressed out. I'm about to play a big Saturday night show. And then I realized, oh, no, it's fine. It's just up against the house music. It sounds horrible. As soon as the house music, that's exactly what you just described. As soon as the house music stops, it's discordant. It's really unsettling. It's dissonance.
It's dissonance. Yeah. And it's really wild to feel that physical effect. Because it immediately, like, you become anxious.
Yeah.
There's an anxiety that hits you that you feel in your body.
Right. Whether you're on stage or you're just alone at home trying to play a Tom Petty song.
Yep.
It's anxiety provoking. Well, let's talk about plasmoid a little bit. So I brought up in the conversation the Peter and Pete take on H2O. I guess H2O and the hydrogen car, the hydrogen engine. This is a whole other take on that technology, isn't it? Potentially.
Potentially. Yeah. And he didn't, what I liked about Sean is he did not dismiss Pete and Peter, like our very short synopsis of the Pete and Peter theory around H2O or water not being H2O.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing about rabbit hole spelunkers is usually they're yes and people.
Yeah, right. Like maybe or maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Can't say no. Can't say no until I know a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do like this idea of, it's all sort of like yes and with the technology. It's like, okay, yes, these are our ingredients. You've got water, whatever it is, and you've got this machine, and you've got diodes and electricity, and then you've got, input and output, and what's going on in the middle, we're not exactly sure, but it is something, and it is creating this effect, and we should look into it more and be harvesting it. And I love the idea that it's not hydrogen or oxygen, but or Brown's gas or the byproduct of stainless steel decomposing, which is sort of what Peter and Pete were saying, that it's something else yet, which is plasma.
Right. And I appreciate also that Sean, his website, his company, IHealCollective, they sell the hydrogen water, the Brown's gas machines.
Yeah.
And in this conversation, he's like, I'm starting to think that maybe it's not even maybe it's plasmoids in this thing. So even though there's a financial stake in this technology and the previous understanding of the technology, how it's working, he's willing to go, well, it might be something else entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating, this the hydrogen water piece, because Dr. Rob Williams, shout out Dr. Rob, sent us the link to a recent, actually, I don't know how recent it is, but Gary Brecka on Joe Rogan. It doesn't get more mainstream in the podcast space than Joe Rogan, or at least, I don't know, maybe mainstream is not the right word, but Gary Brecka.
He's a household name for sure.
He's a household name for sure. Gary Brecka was talking about hydrogen water. He didn't call it Brown's gas. He just called it hydrogen water, and speaking to the health benefits, the myriad health benefits of hydrogen water. And I just find it fascinating that something that seemed fringe when we first heard about it is now becoming so mainstream as to be talked about on Joe Rogan's podcast, to the point where Joe Rogan's like, how do I get my hands on this stuff? And the same guy, Gary Brecka, again, it's like mainstream. I can just consider it like a mainstream conversation. In fact, it was once put to me that Joe Rogan is like Oprah for men, which I don't necessarily buy into, but I thought it was a funny phrase, and it's stuck with me.
It's really...
I think that was Juliet Starrett who first mentioned that. But the same guy, Gary Brecka, is talking about how one of the things that everyone needs to be doing for their health is to ditch tap water.
Yeah.
And talking about fluoride and all the other additives. And so here you are again, Joe Rogan podcast, a topic that would have been considered fringe and conspiracy, fluoride being poison, is now just out there and being widely accepted as fact. And yet nothing is being done.
Right.
You still have municipalities using it. Anyway, a lot of overlap because, Sean Allman, one of his non-negotiables was never drink tap water. No water out of plastic.
Yeah, that's one I got to solve too, is because I've been foraging. I spelt it wrong in a recent post. Foraging spring water from Sis Ortlieb's tap. But I'm still doing it in 5-gallon plastic jugs. So, damn, I gotta lose those jugs. I gotta get glass.
I guess if glass. I suppose you could find, plastic that doesn't leach, BPA free. But I think we're at a point now where we just can't trust plastic.
I think you're right. And as it gets old, these are the type of things that you sort of buy once and you use them year after year after year, and they're going to degrade and they're going to, yeah.
Sitting out in sunshine, all that stuff, getting hot.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably different than a crinkly little Poland Spring bottle, a single serving. But yeah, let's move beyond plastic for fuck's sake.
So you can you forage for spring water, but can you forge structured water? Is that what you're doing with the NLM wand?
Right. That is the argument, right? And there's something to be said for these Brown's gas machines being more water structuring devices as well. I mean, even the terahertz wand that Amanda Vollmer loves, that's a water structuring device. It seems like there's no shortage of ways to structure water. And is that actually what's behind a lot of the magic behind it?
We didn't get a satisfactory answer around Brown's gas or hydrogen water, did we? we dipped our toes in that water. I think we got to do probably have someone on to talk at greater length about it. I mean, I know other folks in these spaces have talked about it, but we haven't, and it's probably folks in our audience who are a little bit more curious. Certainly we are.
The testimonials are pretty jaw-dropping. I mean, I guess you could say that about any number of products or ideas. You can always find testimonials. But I don't know. Like you were saying, like there's nothing like a story, and that's all a testimonial is somebody's personal story. I know George Wiseman has been a go-to Brown's gas machine creator and guest. He's been on Tom Cowan a couple times. He's been on Crow 777. So it's definitely something to look more into, but the plot thickens with this whole plasmoid idea. Because I've never heard anyone bring that up before.
No. Cold fusion, boys.
You know who I have heard use cold fusion is Catherine Austin Fitts.
Mm.
No, she's not in like the health space, but she's in like the finance space and the sovereignty space. And someone once asked her, like, what is the future of energy? She just said very deadpan, cold fusion.
Sure. Yeah.
So, this idea, it's out there. It's around.
Yeah. Ball lightning. Who knew?
I didn't know what the fuck she meant at the time when she said that, when I heard her say that, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, but now it makes more sense.
Yeah. Could be closer. We could be closer than we think.
Yeah. End of the Kali Yuga.
End of the Kali Yuga. Perfect timing. March 21st, 2000.
Figure it out right in time for a cataclysm. So only like 7 of us get to, build it and then destroy the civilization. No, that's cynical. Come on, Michael. What are we talking about? Get it together. Sorry.
Who gets to be among the 7? Is it just lucky folk, or are they chosen by a divine intervention?
I could go either way on that one. I think yes and.
Yeah. But so it's going to be me and 6 others. I think I get to choose. So, folks, if you're interested in joining me as one of 7 folks who make it to the other side of this Yuga, send an email to ben@terraintheory.net and you tell me.
First 6 people.
First 6 people. Not the first 6. I'm going to choose the most worthy 6. Send me an email. I'll let you know how the entries go. And then I'll notify you on March 20th, 2025, the day before. You will be notified if you are among the chosen.
#beat the Yuga.
#beat the Yuga. Well, folks, nothing you heard here should be taken as medical advice, as neither Mike nor I are medical experts. Remember that you are light, you are love. 231.9 is the new 232. No, 432. I'm sorry. I screwed that up.
Yeah, we all knew what you meant.
I'm going to do that again.
Okay.
Remember, folks, nothing you heard here should be taken as medical advice, as neither Mike nor I are medical experts. Remember that you are light, you are love. 431.9 is the new 432. You are your primary healthcare provider. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you on the next one.